Right. I think we are live. If we have no technical issues, then we are live. Hello, everyone. Please let me know first in the chat if you can hear me properly, so that all the sound is correctly set up. And I'm here with Jáchym today. Jáchym, how are you? From our Czech expert, I like to call you.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And how was the election for you? Exciting day, no?
Yeah, I mean, happens once every 4 years. So yeah, pretty big day today.
Did you get your vote in?
I did, yes. I did vote via mail. So that was very unique. First time experience.
Yeah. No, so basically to give everyone a bit of an overview, today we have the Czech elections. They've concluded, all the votes are in and they're being counted now. And as you can see on the screen, you already have the results coming in, or actually 80% of the results are actually already in. And today we will basically discuss three things, right? So I've got, Jáchym is awesome. He writes our scripts for any Czech topic. So he knows a lot about this. We will explain the parties, what this is all about. We will look at the coalitions after that. And then we'll basically look at what it all means for the EU, because I don't know, mixed feelings, right? I mean, what's your first feeling looking at this, Jáchym?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that this is basically it was either a vote of whether they're confirming the current government's policy or whether they are rejecting the current government's policy. And I think the numbers and the mandates that we're looking at this, I think the citizens were very clear in effectively rejecting the current government's policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, to be fair, though, 20% is still being counted. And already in the comments, the last 20% is from the bigger cities, right? So we might still see definitely some changes to this graph.
Exactly. I think it's important also to note that the 80.9% you see at the top, that refers to the counted districts, not the counted votes. And there are some districts that have a lot more voters than others, and those are coming in now.
So these are districts, right? Not the actual
Yes.
complete percentage of population.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that is interesting. All right, before we go into the parties, what they stand for, to the chat, really quickly. If you want a question answered, if you give us a super chat, you'll always get it answered. And if you want to tag us anyway for a question you have, make sure you do @EUMadeSimple, because the red really stands out, and I know that I need to ask that question. So without further ado, okay, looking at the screen here, Jáchym, who are Ano and who is this Babiš guy?
Okay, I think you can think of ANO as like the populist party in the Czech Republic. It's led by Andrej Babiš. He is basically a businessman and has been involved in politics for quite some time now. He used to be a minister of finance in a previous government. Then he led the government from 2017 to 2021. Now he was effectively the leader of the opposition, and it seems that he might be returning to the premiership. Yeah, ANO is ANO is an acronym. In Czech, it means Akce nespokojených občanů, which means basically, I guess, the movement of unsatisfied citizens in a way. And it's at heart, it's a populist party in the Czech system.
Right. And he's a billionaire, right? This Babiš. Tell me a bit more about him.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So as I mentioned, he's a businessman. He is known for, I guess, his activities in the business world. There's this one particular, I guess, business or company that he owns called Agrofert, which is basically, I'm not really sure if it's a cartel or anything like that, but it's basically a company that owns a lot of other companies, particularly in the agricultural sector, and in like that kind of area. And yeah, he's been particularly involved in that. Yeah. And then obviously
he's basically one of the richest guys in the world. It's quite interesting, right? Because I mean,
exactly.
some news that don't like him are like, oh, an oligarch will come to power in Czechia, blah, 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 blah. I mean, is there some truth to
exactly
that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was an entire law that was developed in the past 4 years that was basically like specifically anti-Babiš. It was about conflict of interest when it comes to businesses and politics. So yeah, I think that kind of explains his financial situation, so to speak.
Yeah. And just quickly to the chat, Nico, thank you very much for your super chat. We will get to the formations of governments in a lot of detail a bit later. So
yes.
park your question there. And also in terms of the euro, we have a whole section on the euro, on the EU and everything. So we'll talk about all of that. We just firstly want to give a quick introduction to all of these parties. And
Yes.
that brings us to Spolu, right? Because Fiala, he's the current prime minister, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And what does Spolu stand for? What are they about?
So Spolu means together in Czech. It's essentially a electoral coalition of three main parties. You have ODS, which translates to civic democrats, so to speak. Then you have KDU-ČSL, which is basically Christian Democrats. And then you have Top 09, which is a liberal conservative democratic party.
Right.
Yeah, and ODS is the biggest out of all those three parties, and ODS is the party that's led by Petr Fiala.
Right, this guy. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the second time that they're in this coalition. They went as this coalition into the 2021 elections. We will talk about that later as well. And now they returned and decided to do the same for the 2025 elections.
So Spolu won the last election. That's very important point, right?
Yes, they did, exactly.
Okay. And then we have, let's quickly go through. So Stan, who's Stan? This
Yes.
Rakushan, is that correctly pronounced?
Yes, exactly. Rakushan actually means Austrian in Czech. So that's interesting. But yeah, STAN, it's basically an acronym for Mayors and Independents. It is you can think of it as like a progressive centrist to center-right party in the Czech Republic. Yeah, in the past they've been focused a lot on like localism, subsidiarity, kind of building it from the regions up in a way. Yeah, they are so far seems the third strongest contender.
Are they happy? Would they be happy with a result like this, or is this a bad result for them, for Stan?
Well, they did mention that they're targeting a basically a result over 10%. The leader, Vít Rakušan, he said that if they were to get less than 10%, he would resign. From his position as leader of the party. Obviously, it's not an ideal result for them because from the 2021 elections, when they were in the electoral coalition with the Pirates, they got 33 seats, and now it says they're getting 20. So essentially, they're losing quite a bit of influence.
Great. Okay, interesting. Okay, so then, I mean, if we're talking about quickly, I don't think we've even mentioned this, right? So if we're talking about these three top parties at the moment, how is their, very quickly, how is their view on the EU? Are they, because we are an EU channel, right? What's their view on that?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with ANO. I think ANO can be taken as a Eurosceptic party. Here it's important to note
Europe,
that,
right? With the Patriots.
Yes, exactly. I was about to say that basically, no, it's all good. That they basically were part of Renew Europe for some time. And then they eventually co-founded the Patriots for Europe alongside Orban's Fidesz party and Austria's FPÖ.
Right.
And that very clearly, I think, signalizes this move to greater Euroscepticism, as especially national perspectives or thoughts on the EU have evolved.
Right. And then we have, but Spolu, on the other hand, is very pro-EU, right? They like...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but at that same time, it's also important to mention that Spolu is a more right-wing conservative alliance. So definitely parties like ODS. ODS is part of the European Conservatives and Reformists group, which isn't necessarily anti-EU, but it would like to see reform in certain areas. But generally, they are much more pro-EU than ANO in that regard.
Okay. And then Stan?
Yes, so I think out of these three, I know that they're the most pro-EU. They are in the EPP, but they did want to be in Renew. That's a whole different story I won't get into. But yeah, they're a very strong pro-European party. They do believe that Czech Republic deserves to be in Western political structures. So NATO, the EU, as is, they also are one of the biggest advocates for the euro, which we'll get back to as well. So they're very heavily rooted in pro-EU politics. So
basically, if you're all about Europe, you vote Stan, right?
Yes, you could also vote the Pirates. Those are also very, very pro-EU.
Because I can't believe it, Jáchym. We have, or not we, I live in Germany, right? And there's I think there's a Pirates party here, but it's so small. It's like 0.5% or something like that, I think, in the last vote, or even smaller. I'm not sure. And here it's getting like almost 8.5%. Oh, who are they? Why are they so successful in Czechia?
So the thing is, you can actually kind of envision the Czech Pirates as the German Greens, because the Pirates, at least for this election, they did definitely have some Green candidates support them in that list, and they are a very, once again, very progressive center to center left party, I would say. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Greens by themselves basically have zero support. I think in the European Parliament elections a year ago, they got around 2% of the vote, which isn't enough to get them a seat. But they have basically, I guess, taken over all the progressive center left voters there.
Okay, interesting. And then we have the SPD, which is not to be confused with the Social Democrats in Germany, because they are anything but Social Democrats, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so explain a little about the SPD. Yeah.
Yes, so the SPD in Czech, it's an acronym once again. It means Svoboda a přímá demokracie, which translates to freedom and direct democracy. I think that name already sort of suggests where they would be found, but they are basically a far-right party in Czech politics. Their main kind of vision is direct democracy for the Czech Republic. And a lot of their policies are very far-right reaching, including a referendum on EU and NATO membership.
Crazy.
For the Czech
NATO
Republic.
membership too?
Yes.
That's crazy. So so the SPD here wants a referendum on EU membership, and they're the only party that to the left of the line, so that got seats so far, that wants a referendum, right?
Exactly. I think that's also important to mention. You can see the red line in the middle. So in Czech politics, in order for you to enter parliament, you need at least 5% of the vote. So basically all the subjects left of that line, and all of those are basically that have seats, and then all those right of that line do not have seats.
Okay. Before we look at the right side of the line, we also have the last one, the Motoriste, right?
Yes.
With Turek. What are they about?
Exactly. So basically, I mean, the rough English translation would be motorists. It originally rose as a single issue party that was particularly made to fight against this ban on the new selling of cars with basically gas engines or fuel-powered engines. And yeah, they kind of arose from this single issue. They did rise, obviously developed, I think they're kind of like a center-right conservative kind of political ideology, and they really developed a program, and they did get seats in the European Parliament election. So this is kind of also a chance for them to get seats in the national parliament.
Right. I mean, we don't want to spend too much on the right side, but we also have this Stachilo, and they're communist. You mentioned, I think, before the call.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, Stachilo is it used to be an alliance that was made of several parties. The main party in there was the basically the Czech Communist Party of Bohemia and Moravia. There's some other, like a lot of other interesting parties, including the Czech Social Democrats. They're also part of that alliance.
Okay.
It's now since translated into kind of a movement, so it's no longer officially a coalition, although some parties would disagree with that. But the general rule there is that they basically are very far left, very conservative, kind of mirror SPD, that they really want referendums on EU and NATO membership. So
Right. And because we got another super chat in the comments from Nico.
Yes.
Thank you for the super chat. And he says that we're wrong. For pro EU, you have to vote Volt Czechia. So in order to honor his super chat, where is Volt in all this?
I think it's the purple one, but with 0.06%. That one.
Yes. I'm sorry to say, Nico, it's not a great result for Volt today.
But yeah, Volt is not particularly popular. I think it's because you already have the Pirates and the Mayors. Those are already very progressive, very pro-EU. So it's very hard for Volt to kind of find voters there.
Yeah.
And obviously, Czechs are very conservative. And so obviously the idea of a federal Europe is not something that the Czechs particularly are happy about or really want to hear. So it's very hard for Volt to get voters.
Yeah. Another question in the chat, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, from SS929. Thanks for your question. Why was Anno part of the Renew Europe group?
I think originally when they entered kind of Czech politics, they were still on this like very centrist agenda. At the end of the day, it's important to know that they are a populist party, and they really kind of respond to what the citizens want. Back then, they were still very pro-European, still a bit conservative in certain areas. And that's where they kind of found their home in Renew Europe. They were actually one of the biggest parties, so much so that the large dip in parties in Renew Europe from what was it, 20, when were the last elections, 24? So from 2019, 2024, they had X amount of parties, and then 24 onwards, that number dipped quite a bit. That's because Ano left.
Yeah,
exactly.
Ano left.
I think they had like 9 MEPs or something, like a crazy amount of MEPs.
Yeah. But anyway, just to quickly summarize, I think, correct me if you're wrong, Jáchym. So basically, for people that just came to the live stream, 86% of the precincts are reporting at the moment. So we're almost done with the votes coming in for Czechia. And we have Ano leading. Ano is a Eurosceptic populist party.
Yes.
They're followed by Spolu, or I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but Spolu, yeah, exactly. They are more pro-EU, or definitely pro-EU, and want to be involved in the Western structure of things. They're in second place currently. Third place, we have Stan. They're probably the most pro-EU party of the ones that are getting seats in the parliament.
Also, the Pirates, they're very similar.
The Pirates are also very pro-EU, exactly. And then the SPD, not to be confused with Social Democrats or anything like that, they are far right, want a referendum on the EU, definitely don't support the euro, things like that. And Motoristen, I kind of lost there. What was that? Centrist party? What was it?
Yeah, I mean center-right, conservative.
Okay.
Because
Okay, interesting. So let me ask you again. I mean, for the people that came new, do you think Spolu can catch up with Ano tonight?
I think the answer is no. Now we have just under 14% of districts that still need to be counted. These are the big cities, so Prague, Brno, Plzeň. Basically, Prague is the one that would give Spolu the most votes, which we'll see later when we look at the map, how each of the parts of the Czech Republic voted. But I think if we go back 4 years ago, basically at the point where Ano was leading and then they swapped with Spolu was somewhere around the 50% or 45% mark when all the districts were counted. So, and also the difference is 14%. I mean, in that regard. So
to conclude, though, I mean, this is not a good day for Spolu, then, right? I mean, maybe let me ask you the question like this: who would you say is the clear winner in comparison to last election? Who is the loser compared to the last election?
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear. I think the clear winner is Ano. They have increased their amount of mandates, at least based on what they have now. At the end of the last electoral period, they had 71 mandates. Now they have 85. So it's an increase of 14. And obviously, I think the big losers are both Spolu and the mayors, because those both lost on mandates and they also lost on their majority. I think partially you could also say the Pirates did win to a certain extent because they did have only 4 mandates in the past electoral period. So now they have 4 times as much, at least based on the provisional results. And of course, for the motorists, it's also a big achievement because they've never been in parliament before.
And just to answer a question from the chat, who holds the current who holds the current government, or what's the parliament now? Who's leading? As in, who's running the country? Put it that way.
So you mean the current government, the current structure?
Yes.
So the current government is formed by Spolu and the mayors and independents, so the second and third parties respectively. The Pirates used to be a part of the government, but they left in, I believe, 2024 due to some internal struggles surrounding digitalization. So that's kind of the structure, and Spolu and the mayors together have 104 MPs. Right now you can see that the predictions give them 70 combined, so they're basically losing on 34 MPs between the two of them.
I mean, I think it's the best point to really look at a map and then go to the parliament, right?
Exactly.
So I mean, I see in the comments already it's hard to understand, but later we're going to go here to the parliament and see how it can be set up. But before we do, let's quickly have a look at the map, because I think this says everything.
Yes.
I mean, just to get people on board, so I'll quickly explain it. You can maybe explain why, Jáchym. But Ano is literally leading everywhere in the country, except for the little green blob in the middle where Spolu is leading. And that's pretty much Prague, right?
Yes, exactly.
So why is there this massive divide between the countryside the countryside and the big city Prague, or the center of the country?
I mean, a large part of this divide, I think, is obviously caused usually due to financial economic issues. Obviously, the wages in Czech Republic are not as high compared to countries like Germany or Austria, and especially not if you're not in a city like Prague. Generally, I mean, Prague has always been very I guess, democratic, which also is the case here, that Spolu did indeed, or at least so far is winning in Prague. But basically all the other areas are very prone to populist rhetoric and really kind of, because ANO, I think, gets most of their voters. Most of the voter base of ANO is pensioners, and all of those kind of live outside of Prague and also in a lot of like smaller cities. So I think that's where the votes come from.
Why don't we take an example right here? Slovakia, so Fico country. And we go here and you can see already here. So, ANO winning by quite a bit over Spolu.
Yeah.
And then here, here it's even crazier.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting one.
Whoa, like that. 45% against 17%. And
I think...
What countries is bordering? It's bordering Poland.
That's Poland.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it's actually very interesting, like this particular province of the Czech Republic, so to speak, because in the Czech Republic, all the politicians, they are basically candidates within that province. So you can see that this particular province, if you scroll down a bit, please, just so we can see all the mandates. So you can basically see that for that entire, there's 16, 18, 21, 22, 23 mandates. So the entire province gives out 23 mandates, and more than half of them belong to ANO.
Yeah.
And that's particularly because Babiš is in that province. And so obviously that's where the ANO campaign was very strong.
Crazy.
So that's particularly, where the leaders usually are, that's where those parties usually excel.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm just...
there you can see.
Yeah, I'm just clicking around. Now I'm clicked on Prague, just for everyone to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Prague. You can see that Spolu gets twice as many mandates as ANO, and then of course you got the Pirates with the exact same amount of mandates as ANO, and also the mayors and independents have too. Yeah. So there it's a clear win for Spolu, the Pirates, and the mayors, but obviously that's not enough for you to secure a majority in the Chamber of Deputies.
Wow. I have to mention someone in the comments. Andre gave us a super chat. Thank you, Andre. And he said, it's a fjall-over. You get it? Fjall-over? Okay.
Yeah. I get that.
No, good try. Good try.
There was this because I actually want to bring in a funny story here quickly. Fiala in Czech, it actually refers to a flower. It's the name of a flower, which is purple, because fialová is purple in Czech. And at one point, Babiš in this past, electoral period, he came to the Chamber of Deputies for a speech, and he brought that, you remember the purple minion from Despicable Me?
Yes, I do.
So he brought him to the stage, and he basically said, this is our prime minister.
Oh my God.
He is ruining our country. And I think that kind of became one of those staples of this past electoral period, especially at least for Chamber of Deputies.
I bet you that got him votes. That's like a classic meme that people would enjoy, right?
Yeah, probably. So for all of those that want to see memes, that's, I think, the one that you should try to find. That one was really fun.
You know what? We should check it out. Maybe towards the end of the live stream, you can find a video of it.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah. I'll try to find something, send you a link. Or...
You know what I think is also interesting, Jáchym? If we click now on the world, so this is the diaspora.
Yes.
And look at that. That's insane.
Exactly. Here, I think it's also important to highlight that during Fiala's government, there was this new law on voting by mail. The Czech Republic was one of the last European countries to not have the option to vote by mail. So if you wanted to vote, you would have to go to the embassy. And obviously in lands like Canada, it's very tough to go to the embassy because there might only be 2 across the entirety of the country. So the government passed this voting by mail. And as a result, I feel like that definitely stimulated a lot more voting. I personally voted with mail. I could have taken a train for 2.5 hours to go vote at an embassy, but it was much easier for me to just vote, from where I am.
Yeah. But no, I completely get it. But I think it's very interesting here, right? So the people abroad, not in Czechia, they voted Spolu number 1. And if we go to the second biggest, the Pirates and Stan. And only then at third vote, not even a third vote. You see, no one votes for ANO outside of Czechia. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Insane.
It's a very interesting divide.
Yeah. Let's do a quick update again. So for anyone that came to the stream new, so basically we are looking at the Czech results of the election, and we've got 90% almost reporting. And we still, ANO is holding strong at about 35, 36%. And Spolu is gaining ground a little bit. Yeah, like it went. I think last time we checked from 21 to 25%, from 21.5% to now 22.2. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think now we go to the most exciting part. Let's have a look at the
Yes.
parliament and explain what we're seeing here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe how about we first look at the elections from 2021? It might be good to drive a comparison there.
Yeah.
So this was basically the setting of the parliament 4 years ago after the elections. You can see that Spolu actually won against Ano by 0.64%. So it was a very tight race.
Insane. Yeah.
And actually, because the way that the math works, Spolu did get 1 mandate less than Ano. That being said, Spolu, together with the coalition of mayors and pirates, which is the third actor, that's the black dots, they together formed a majority with 108 seats. And obviously, Spolu won. So Petr Fiala, then leader of Spolu, he was named by the president of the Czech Republic to put together a government, and he brought the pirates and the mayors in.
Slow down. Yeah, let's explain that. So how does that work? So normally
Yes.
the winner of the election, the one that got the highest percentage, I assume, or the most
Yes.
seats, the highest percentage?
Usually just the highest percentage.
Okay, they get the mandates by the president, who in this case is who?
Yes. Right now it's Petr Pavel.
Petr Pavel. He's quite a cool guy, actually. Okay, and he can then basically give the mandate for them to form a government, right? And then Spolu created a government with who?
With the pirates and mayors.
And the pirates and mayors. So these guys here, right? Paristan.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And that government has now ruled for, 4 years, I guess.
Yes, exactly. There were some attempts to basically remove them from power with motions of no confidence. As I mentioned at the start, the pirates did leave the cabinet, but because of the way that preferential votes work in the Czech Republic, the pirates only ended up getting 4 seats, and the mayors got the remaining 33 out of the 37 mandates they got, which meant that even though the pirates left the government, Spolu and the mayors together still had a majority of 104 seats.
104 seats, so quite a small majority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was still over the 101 required for a majority.
Right. Okay. So Spolu and the pirates then led. Spolu and Stan then led the country right until now, pretty much.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And now, if we go to 2025, this is what it looks like with the current results.
Yes. So,
Ano, man. Ano rose from, sorry to interrupt you, from 72 to 84. That's pretty big.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a clear victory for Ano. So they have definitely risen, and obviously, as I mentioned, the mayors and Spolu, they have really lost out. Right now, you can see together they form 70 mandates, which they still require 31 to get a majority, and that's nowhere close.
So this is the old one, right?
Exactly. This is the outgoing government.
So the outgoing government, who had 104 seats, now only has 17.
Exactly. So it's a very clear. The citizens very clearly said that they're not fond of the actions and of the policies taken by Spolu and the mayors.
Jeez. Okay. All right. Okay. So maybe we can play around a little bit with what we think the next coalition could be. So
yes,
Ano is going to win. Let's be honest about it, right? So we have. So what does this mean? This means there's no majority. So they need a coalition partner, right? Or how do things work?
Yeah. So exactly. There has I think there was only once in history when there was no government that required a coalition, but I might be wrong on that. But Babiš did mention very clearly a few times that his dream would be to have a single party cabinet.
Who doesn't dream that? Who doesn't dream that?
Who doesn't? Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, if I were him, I would as well. But obviously that didn't happen. I think none of the polls really kind of suggested that it would. So now it's basically a question of how Ano will proceed in terms of forming a government, so we can play around with it.
So Ano's dream is, well, they did very well, but their dream has died. that won't work alone. So who is there out of this list right now? So these are the parties that are currently on track to win seats. What would be their most, if you're talking about ideology, what party would fit best to Ano?
I think the clearest fit for Ano would be the Motorists, so the very last party there.
Right.
Together, you can see that they don't have a majority themselves.
Okay.
So that obviously makes the dynamics of this very, very interesting. It did, I mean, originally, like, maybe before the 30% of the districts were counted, it was a very clear, like, ANO motorists government majority, but obviously now they have lost it due to the increases that ANO mayors and the pirates have in districts like Prague.
Okay, so slow down. So before the election, it looked like ANO and the motorists would get a majority. The polls, I mean, the polls kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, from not necessarily. I was more so referring like earlier when the count was still not as high. ANO, I think, was kind of around like the 90 mandate mark, and the motorists had around 15, 16. So that would be a very clear, 100, 106 seats.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm looking at the chat, and Andre said another gridlock nation added to the bunch. I mean, is he right?
There are two ways to look at it. So I think the one important thing to mention here is that the last time that ANO formed the government, it was a minority government, which did survive the entire 4-year period. So this was back in 2017, where ANO formed a minority government with the Socialists and Democrats. And they had a so-called confidence and supply agreement with the communists. What that essentially means is that the communists support them on votes of confidence, so they vote in favor, and they also support them on the budget. But otherwise, they're very free to basically choose how they vote with the government.
Okay, so minority government could be a possibility with maybe another party supporting them on certain areas, right?
Yeah, I think that's the tough part. Because I mean, you have 4 options basically. You have Spolu, mayors, and pirates, all 3, which ruled out that they would not, under any circumstance, engage in support or coalition discussions with ANO. And then the only remaining option thus is the SPD. Together, these 3 parties, hypothetically, if SPD were to enter government, they would have a very clear majority.
So sorry to interrupt you again, but if we remove the motorists, even ANO and SPD would have a majority.
As of now, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It can still change.
Yeah.
But as of now, they do still have that. I think there, though, it's important to really talk about what the actual possibility of this sort of government, being formed is. And personally, I think it's quite low because, ANO and SPD really fundamentally disagree on a lot of topics, especially pertaining to foreign policy. ANO was very clear that, despite their disagreement with a lot of what the EU does, for instance, the Green Deal, ETS2, all those, areas, they still believe that it's best for the Czech Republic to stay within the EU. But as I mentioned earlier, SPD is like hard line, like no EU membership whatsoever. So obviously that's quite tough.
Okay, so ANO doesn't really, I mean, wouldn't prefer the SPD as a partner either, right? Because they would have to find compromises on things like that.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Wow. Okay. So basically, again, to summarize, ANO is Eurosceptic, sure. They don't like certain parts of the EU, but they're nowhere near as hard as the SPD, who literally just wants a referendum tomorrow.
Exactly. I mean, if they had the majority, they would probably do it. So.
Right. Okay. If they had a majority. Okay, interesting. So, I mean, even let's very quickly look again at our results. So we got 91.6% reporting.
Yes.
And the majority, if we look again, so, I mean, SPD and ANO is still possible, but I think you're right. With many more Spolu votes coming in, I don't think this will be possible. Which means that this will be the only possibility for ANO.
Yes, it would, or it could also potentially just be a minority government with ANO and the motorists, potentially supported by the SPD on very limited things. Or there's, of course, completely the option that we could face a hung parliament where ANO is unable to form a majority government. I guess then we would see what's going to happen next.
Let's go the other way. Could it be possible that, I mean, what's the opposition like? Of course, it's not a majority, but could this be possible? A grand, like in Germany, a grand coalition.
Yes, I don't think this would be possible. The entire, I guess, campaign that Spolu and ANO to a certain extent built was very anti each other. And I know the situation in Germany was basically, the SPD and the CDU-CSU were very kind of like against each other, but they still decided to build that kind of government together.
Well, they've done it before, right? In Germany, it's not exactly rare.
Yeah, it's very tough to mirror. Like the entire premise of the past 4 years was that Spolu, the mayors, and the pirates are very anti-ANO. and ANO is very anti-them. I think what ANO will try to do is obviously will try to lure the individual parties, because obviously Spolu is a coalition. There's 3 parties there, so they might try to lure out certain parties. But I don't think that's something that I don't think that's something that these parties would do. I think if that were to happen, it would be basically the loss of a lot of trust and could potentially lead to severe consequences in the future. So I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to stick within the opposition together with the mayors and the pirates. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see a situation like this. But if ANO were somehow able to find more than 120 mandates for its government, it's important to know that that gives them a constitutional majority. So that means they would have the power to amend the constitution. But as of now, I would say it's very unrealistic for that situation to occur.
Yeah. I mean, ANO and Stan would also have a majority, but that's that's even more unlikely than ANO and Spolu, no?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once again, the mayors and independents had a very anti-ANO campaign. Actually, in the final, I guess, week or 2 weeks of the mayor's campaign, basically what they said is they started even distributing leaflets of Spolu and the pirates, basically saying it really doesn't matter, just make sure that we have 101 seats.
Okay.
So they were kind of just saying, vote for democratic parties. Doesn't matter if you don't vote us. Let's just make sure we have 101 seats together, which, as we can see, is not the case.
Jeez. All right. Okay. So to conclude this section of our chat, so the most likely would probably be these two going together, and then potentially working with the SPD, either in a coalition, which would be very unstable, or working with them on certain areas in a minority government. Right? Would that be the conclusion here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously it would be easier for ANO to get a coalition with SPD, because together, as of now, they do still have a majority, but due to their severe differences on policy issues, I don't think that's realistic.
Yeah. I mean, how much? 92.5% counted. Okay.
I mean, it can still change, but yeah, well.
Oh. Can you still hear me, Jáchym?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Sorry, I just didn't hear you for a second. Okay, say it again. So I know SPD and Motorists. It will be determined there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next steps, again, just to refresh the chat or the people in the live stream. So right now, or what the next things will happen is that the president will now ask ANO to create a government, right? And then
Most likely, yes.
What will the process be after that? How long will that take? Can he also? Does the president have a leaning? Does he like ANO? How does that work?
See, this was actually a very interesting discussion, because the one thing with Babiš is obviously he's the leader of ANO, but as I mentioned, he did have this business that I believe he still has ties to. And in the past couple of weeks, the final weeks of the campaign really centered on Babiš's I guess conflict of interest. Which obviously, the president is one who really wants, the laws to be respected. He said he wouldn't name someone who would have conflict of interest. So it also depends there what would happen. But I think ultimately we would see the president naming a person from ANO, most likely Babiš, if not some of the other key figures, to basically form a government.
And that means that Babiš is the most likely next prime minister, correct?
Most likely, yes. So I believe we would most likely see a return of Babiš to power, provided that he can also find the majority and the support.
Okay. Do you see a scenario of it going completely wrong, where we end up with a hung parliament, or even worse, new elections?
I think there's definitely a possibility of that happening. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure to what extent that is a realistic possibility. I'm only kind of looking at the numbers we have right now. So obviously, I mean, if we go systematically, right, ANO's dream was to have a single party majority. That didn't happen. The next best thing for ANO, considering all the parties that got in, would be to form a coalition with motorists. Together, they do not have a majority. And obviously, I think ANO is more likely going to try to somehow agree with the SPD to potentially yield them support. But the question is, to what extent would that actually be feasible? So there is definitely a potential for a hung parliament. It rarely happens in Czech politics, unless maybe one of the 5 meaning any of the free Spolu parties, the mayors or the pirates were to say, okay, we'll work with you, I think that's extremely unlikely. So yeah, I think we'll see. Obviously, this is not something that we can really answer now, but we will definitely follow and see in the next couple of days how that will evolve, or weeks or months.
Super. That was a really good analysis. Yeah, that makes complete sense. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Exactly.
Before we look at what this all means for Europe and the EU, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. So let's look at those. So Alexandru, we covered your question just now. Thank you for your question. Celtic, does all of this mean that the euro is on track to be adopted? Okay, so we're going to park your question, Celtic, because that will come in our euro section. Ollie asked, are we saying that outside of Prague, the rest of Czechia is basically made up of left behind regions in economic and social decline? What are the reasons for their massive support for Babiš? So basically this. Anything to say around that, Jáchym, or is it a bit hard to say, I guess, but yeah, go for it.
I mean, I'm not an expert in regional development. I think, as I mentioned, there is a large discrepancy between especially wages that are paid in Prague compared to just outside. And I feel like at least the way that Babiš kind of structured and ANO generally structured their manifesto and their campaign was, they really kind of want to make sure that these people in the regions would get more money essentially on the wages. So as I mentioned, large portion of this are pensioners of these voters. So obviously they're concerned about getting as much pension money as possible. So yeah, I think it's a lot to do with wages and also maybe some regional inequalities. But at the end of the day, obviously taking into account that ANO is a populist party at heart, they obviously appeal to that, that regional majority, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yes, no expert here, so please don't consult me for any questions pertaining to regional differences.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. It's a hard question too, and we'd have to also see in the aftermath, like how different groups voted, right? How did the young vote? How did the old vote? And exactly, and that information, at least not on this website, is not yet available.
Yes, maybe if I might add one more thing to that.
Yeah.
If you go back to the results section, I think it's important to also mention here the voter turnout as of now. So you can see that the voter turnout is 68.66%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but 4 years ago, it was 65.43%. So there's definitely an increase. Some would say marginal. For us, it's pretty big because the average was 65%, basically ever since independent Czech Republic. So clearly there was more interest in this election compared to others. And I personally think that things like, voting by ballot definitely made that a possibility. There were a lot of reports from embassies basically having to form lines of these people to actually go to vote, which hasn't really happened in the past. But also maybe domestically, there's a very big, there's basically a very divided society when it comes to either you're basically pro-Babiš or you're anti-Babiš. That's kind of the setting. So that's one other thing I wanted to mention is the higher turnout.
No, it's a good point. I forgot to mention at the start of the live stream. Okay, let's go look at the last couple questions. Lucas, possible to have a call with us? That's reserved for our Patreon. So if you're really interested in having a chat with us personally, you can go to our Patreon page in the description. SS929, it could be an ANO government with SDP and motorist confidence and supply. It's exactly like you said, Jáchym. So very quickly, for anyone new in the stream, the most likely outcome are these two parties going together, ANO and Motoristen, and then the SPD as confidence and supply.
Exactly.
And then let's see if there's another question. No, that's it for the question. So let's go to the final part of our live stream. And this is all about what do these results mean for Europe? Because if you are in the EU Commission or if you're Ursula von der Leyen, this is not exactly your dream result, is it?
No, definitely not.
No, because maybe explain a little bit. I mean, there's a couple of things to talk about, right? Let's start maybe with what this means for the EU and also what does this mean for the euro? Because Czechia is still a country that it doesn't use the euro. You use your Czech crowns, sorry?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, Czech crowns.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. What does ANO mean for Europe?
Yes, definitely. Before I get to that, I actually wanted to really highlight one important, development of Czech Republic for the EU, and that was the Czech presidency of the Council of the European Union, which did take place during Fiala's government. Objectively, by reports and by the EU itself, it was highlighted as a very strong pro-EU presidency. One of the particular achievements was this development on basically importing less gas from Russia. And the Czech Republic, particularly the ministry responsible, played an instrumental role in essentially developing frameworks for strategically reducing not only Czech Republic's reliance on Russian gas, but generally Europe's reliance on Russian gas. It was like one of the main points of that presidency. And so obviously that's something that von der Leyen liked, but return to power of Anna is not something that she's gonna like.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned von der Leyen, but I obviously I mean the EU as a whole, right?
Yeah. I mean, as was mentioned, Anna, like they meant it very clearly that obviously they would like to see reform, and they are against certain points, primarily the Green Deal. They have been very strong advocates against the Green Deal, as well as the new ETS emissions trading scheme. So particular environmental issues, also migration. They said they would do everything in their power to basically go against the migration pact. So obviously not something that the EU would like, particularly seeing that there's much more effort in that area.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely gonna prove a bit more challenging. A lot of people have kind of really suggested an ANO-led Czech Republic could really kind of, to an extent, reflect the Hungary model as well as the Slovakia model.
That would be my next question. Are we looking at the third? Because you have, let's restart that. You have in Orban in Hungary, you got Fico in Slovakia, and now you got Babiš in Czechia. Is that in the same caliber, or would you say that's overdoing it?
Well, there was, I think about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting with Orban, and I believe it was the Slovak president, Pellegrini. I'm certain he also met with Fico, but basically they agreed that a Babiš-led Czech Republic would be the best thing for them to sort of add to this counterbalance to the EU.
Right.
In a lot of those contentious issues like environmental policy, migration policy, etc.
Right.
So I definitely think that we would see ANO work much more on behalf with Hungary and with Slovakia to that extent.
Right.
So yeah.
Excuse me. That's not great news, but
yeah.
Just a quick shout out to the chat, because I see El Viejo Continente here, and he's a friend actually. He runs a Spanish channel about the European Union. So if
very cool.
Any Spanish people in the chat, excuse me, I got a bit of a cough now. Definitely go to his channel. It's really cool. So check it
out. One other thing I actually want to mention, looking at the results right now, look at that. ANO 84 mandates, SPD 16. These two parties can no longer form a majority together. Now,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, let's check that. It's in here, right?
So
ANO and SPD. No more majority for ANO and yeah. Crazy.
So I think ANO gained the mandate. I can see 50. Spolu gained the mandate. 51 mandates for ANO. They most likely stole that from SPD. So as of now, any sort of government or any sort of majority requires more than two parties. This is obviously still the most realistic, with the motorists getting into government and SPD probably having a supply and confidence agreement. That being said, now it's no longer possible for ANO and SPD by themselves to form a majority.
Right. You explained it very quickly. So just very quickly to anyone new. So ANO is winning.
Yes.
ANO is going to most likely form a coalition with Motoristen. That fits them best. And SPD will support them. Exactly.
That's the way I see it. But obviously, I think SPD would be very careful about what policies they would support, particularly how ANO and the motorists see the EU. They are definitely on the more reform side. They're definitely Eurosceptic, but they're not like hardline anti-EU.
Right.
So I feel like, especially in foreign policy, SPD is also very like anti-NATO as well. So there's very especially when it comes to questions of foreign policy, there can definitely be a lot of instability, a lot of disagreements there.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So we're going into the topic of EU, right? So we talked about Euroscepticism a little bit, but what I'm really interested in is the euro, because Czechia has been flirting with the idea a little bit, but not really a lot of traction yet. What does this mean for the euro?
Okay. I think the very simple answer is that we will not see any movement towards the euro in this next electoral period. Reason for that being, a lot of these parties, basically outside of the mayors and the pirates, which are very pro-EU, pro-euro, basically all the other parties are anti-euro. Interestingly, that also includes Spolu. There was this one period during the Spolu mayor's government where basically the mayors decided to name, I guess, sort of a commissioner for the euro. You can kind of think about it. And obviously Spolu was like, why did you do that? Like, that's not something we agreed on. And the mayors were basically forced to make that commissioner resign.
Right.
So even within that government, Spolu is much more of a conservative democratic alliance. They're still, I think in their manifesto, the exact wording of it is basically something along the lines that under like stable political and economic conditions, we would consider adopting the euro. The mayors were very clear. They would like, next year we will name a commissioner for the euro and we will immediately focus on ERM2 and everything to basically get within the eurozone as quickly as possible. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So basically, no euro in the next 4 years.
Yes.
Because Stan here, the third biggest party, is the main driver behind it, right?
As well as the Pirates, I would give them equal credit. But obviously, together, even during the Spolu government they had with them, it was not, it was not realistic for that to happen.
Okay, interesting. All right. And El Viejo Continente, just to answer your question, is we've got 95% of votes counted almost. So these results, districts, my bad. So almost 95% of districts are reporting, which basically means that these results, yes, they might change a bit to and forth, but ANO is the clear winner. There's no way around it. Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay. So again, to summarize, Spolu, Stan and the Pirates, they are very much in favor of the euro. The others aren't. So we'll see little movement over the next years. And this goes to the next question, because I want to share something on the screen. 1 second.
Yes.
This will take a second. Here we go. This is the Eurobarometer for Czechia. Basically asks about the EU and things like that, because we are an EU channel. And what I always find is quite surprising is here. So the question is, in general, does the EU conjure up for you a positive, fairly positive, neutral, or fairly negative, or very negative image? And you can see the outer pie is the EU average. So 52% of Europeans are very happy, very positive. And in the Czech Republic, it's only 35%. So a lot lower than the average. And I mean, this has been traditionally so, actually. I think it's the last 10 years has been quite similar. And maybe a little bit around that. Why are Czechs more, I wouldn't say Eurosceptic, but at least don't have a positive image of the EU?
I think there's actually a quite simple answer to this. I believe that a lot of the Czechs don't actually know to what extent the EU actually affects them. They don't actually know really how the EU works. It's not really like a big topic in national politics to really talk about the EU. And I think that, realistically, the voters of like Spolu and the mayors, the Pirates, obviously, they're the ones that fit within the blue part of the pie. And then the neutral ones and the negative ones are, obviously you have ANO, you have the motorists, et cetera. But I think the main reason for that is a lot of the people don't actually know how the EU works. They don't actually know how the EU affects their daily lives. And realistically, the rhetoric, especially around environmental policy, has only been negative. The Czechs have been traditionally very conservative. Obviously, even post-revolution, they have been very conservative. But, I think it's just, to an extent, a failure of the Czech Republic to really kind of clearly explain how the EU really affects their lives, because a lot of the rhetoric is mostly negative, like the EU is only doing bad stuff. But at the same time, it also means, like certain stability, certain like partnership for us. So we don't want to leave it, but at the same time, we don't really know what the EU is doing good for us.
Right. And I guess that's also a lot to do with, I saw a comment in the chat. I think it's quite a good one from Martin. Our problem with the EU is that local politicians are quick to take credit and blame any problems on the EU. Even pro-democratic parties do that.
Exactly.
So, and I guess someone like Babiš will, maybe even Spolu will do exactly that, right?
Yeah, I think also the way that kind of the EU is phrased, at least in Czech political discourse, it's always referred to as the Brussels, It's never really referred to as like the EU. It's only referred to like, oh yeah, we just got a regulation from Brussels. So it's almost as if like, obviously in Brussels means the EU, but to Czechs, it mostly means that someone is like imposing their kind of vision or their rules on the Czechs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the way that the discourse is pictured in national politics.
Makes sense. So let's go back to the results. Any update here? Then I think there's something else in the chat too I saw earlier. I'm not sure who asked, but thank you nonetheless. Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
What is Ano's and Babish's position, the winner of this election, most likely, or like 99% likely? What is their position on that?
Yeah, I think Ano at certain times has made it clear that they are okay. So they are definitely more, I guess, on the pro-Ukraine side, but not really as heavily as the current government. They did advocate against this. I'm not sure if you heard of it. It's called the Czech Munitions Initiative.
I heard about it. Yes.
Exactly. Basically, the Czech Republic during Fiala decided to, like, voluntarily, they were asking different states to contribute whatever munitions they have, and they would then send that to Ukraine. And obviously, the government to that extent was very, like, also pro-military support. And the way that Ano kind of phrased its campaign is like, we want to support Ukraine, but not necessarily militarily. And it also kind of relates to how they want to, I guess, treat people from Ukraine in Czech territory. So a lot of the campaign has kind of gone, that basically, like, the Ukrainians are kind of like stealing Czech worker positions and, kind of basically like not positively contributing to the economy. So there's definitely less enthusiasm for Ukraine. I think overall, Babiš realizes that, if they stop completely supporting Ukraine, then it would be much more of an issue given, Russia's actions, especially the recent ones with airspace incursions, etc. But I think they're definitely much more skeptical on providing support on the military side of things. They're definitely, I think, in favor of providing like humanitarian support, perhaps financial aid, not certain about that. But I think they are more staunchly opposed to military aid as is.
Okay, so conclusion is there won't be a complete cutoff. It's not like Orban style, where it's like we need to completely block it, but they are a bit more skeptical or hesitant, maybe that's the right word, to support the whole Ukrainian cause as the Spolu would be, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And by the way, I want to quickly go back on something I said about 5 minutes ago. As you can see, the SPD now is back to 17 mandates. So together with Ano, they would form a majority. So you can see that it's still changing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's going up and down. But obviously, yeah, I think the clear thing here to say is, we shouldn't make conclusions now on the possibility of government. We should really wait up until 100% is calculated and just go from there.
Right. So for anyone new that joined, the most likely, the winner of the election is Ano, and they need a coalition partner though, and it's really the only one that can give them a majority that's somewhat realistic would be SPD, but they need 101 seats, and they're right on the cusp of it, as you can see.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would need 3 with Motorista, which makes it a lot more unstable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Very, very cool. Yeah, no, I mean, that's pretty much my question. So let's hand it over to the chat. So please tag us if you have any final questions on the live stream. We are currently at 96% reporting, or districts reporting, which means it's almost final. And of course, at EU Made Simple, we will make a video on this. That's going to happen right after this live stream. But yeah, Jáchym, anything you saw that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
Yes, I did actually send it to you. It was about the poll that I wanted to discuss.
All right, let's go there. Okay. 1 second.
It's the screenshot of the poll.
This here.
Yes, essentially. So the thing about Czech polling, I think, once again, has proven really inaccurate, so to speak, because you can obviously see the predictions here that how many, 3, 6, 7 political subjects would make it into
the parliament,
in fact, it was
right? Like all of these would make it into the parliament. Yeah.
Well, not all of them. All above the motorists, because they still have 5.4%.
Yeah.
You need to take into account, that's one thing I should mention. The dark color is the actual like percent they give them, and the light color is the they call it potential. So it's like the most voters they could get. But here, I think it's very important to mention, if you look at it, second on the left of the motorists, we have Stachelo with 7.7%. So, and all of these polls, this was the very last poll that was released by Ipsos. A lot of the polls kind of suggested that, Stachelo would be back in the parliament, and they would have
Jáchym, explain
an
again who
extent,
Stachilo are. Explain what they are again. What they stand for, so people know.
Yes. So basically, these are far left conservative, primarily made out of communists. Interestingly, also coupled with the Social Democrats, and also some other like Czech workers' parties and like very far left, very conservative. And they have been basically kicked out from the Chamber of Deputies in the 2021 elections. And now all the polls kind of suggested, okay, they would get back into the Chamber of Deputies. But clearly, I mean, this is what the last poll said, but if you look at the actual results, it's currently, as what I'm looking at now, it's 4.39% for Stachilo, which doesn't make them go above the 5% that is required. So
basically, to summarize what you mentioned, so Stachilo, which is like a communist party almost, very far left, 7.7% to 18.8% was like the range that the polls put it at. But if we look at the actual results, I mean, geez, your polling sucks, man. 4.39%.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some other, if you can quickly go back to the poll, there's some other differences I would also like to quickly talk about, at least briefly.
Yeah. Oh, 1 second.
Yeah, the other one.
Yeah.
So the other one I really want to mention also is SPD. You can see them in the polls at 10.1%. Currently, they have reached 7.92% in the actual election. I think in the 2021 election, they had around 9.8, 9.7%. So you can see that Ipsos was kind of giving them like a potential to basically retain their mandates. But actually, I think because of the motorists, a lot of, I guess, unsatisfied SPD voters kind of moved to the motorists, maybe perhaps to ANO as well.
Right.
And realistically, you can see that sometimes, at least in the case of the Czech Republic, it's very tough to rely on these polls.
Yeah.
Because you can see, like, if Stachilo was there, then obviously that would mean, seats for them, seats for like less seats for others, and obviously that would completely, it
Change
would
the whole
potentially
game.
make.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think this also serves as a reminder that the Social Democrats and the Communists did support the ANO minority-led government between 2017 and 2021. So they could have, to an extent, I personally think it wouldn't work, but they could have been in the question of, ANO trying to find partners for its support. But the fact that they didn't make it past, despite all of these polls suggesting they would, is also very interesting when it comes to the difference in, how Czech polls, what they suggest, and the actual difference.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, you told me 3 weeks before we had this live stream, like, don't trust the polls in Czechia. They're very, very volatile. But Jáchym, let's look at some of the super chats and some of the questions we got. So first of all, Andrej, I'm not sure. How do you pronounce his name, Jáchym? Because I think it's a Czech name, no? Or am I wrong?
No, it looks Polish to me.
Oh, yeah, of course, Polish. Sorry, Andrej. Sorry, I didn't want to call you Czech.
Andrej.
Yeah. No, Andrej, thank you so much for your super chat. We really appreciate it. It keeps us, keeps us going. So appreciate it. And
yes,
go ahead.
Yeah, at the very end of his message, he says in Polish, Česká republika to přežije, which basically means like Czech Republic will survive it. It's in Polish.
Okay. Very cool.
So,
all right, let's go to the next question. How is party discipline? Oh, wait, the next super chat. We'll go with the super chat first. Peter, thank you so much for your question. This EU skepticism will only increase across the EU. How can the EU reform to win the trust of the Czech people? Now, Jáchym, that's the $1 million question, or million euro question. What do you think? Do you have any ideas there?
Or million Czech crown question. We don't have
$1 million Czech crown question.
I think there it's really important to kind of highlight once again that a lot of the Czechs don't really know particularly how the EU works. So obviously addressing EU reform to the Czechs first is a very big question. It also depends obviously what this EU reform would look like. At least from what I understand, most of it pertains to, voting on like foreign policy, this whole idea of removing the veto. So, obviously that might prove a bit tough now with ANO kind of acting as a counterweight.
But sorry to interrupt you, Jáchym. Don't you think so my opinion here is, don't you think that if people were actually more involved in like EU politics, so I'm going to go out there and say involved in actually electing the president of the commission. I know it has its downsides, it definitely does, but then because they have to vote, people automatically maybe start informing them a little bit more about what the commission president even does. Wouldn't that be a good step as a reform?
Perhaps. I'm just searching right now. I did want to bring up a statistic for that, and that was specifically voter turnout. So the Czech elections, specifically the European Parliament elections in the Czech Republic last year, had a turnout of, do you want to try and guess? How much do you think the turnout
Super
was?
low, super low. Like,
Super
I don't know,
low?
40%, 35%.
Okay. 36.45%.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, by the way, was an increase of 7.7 percentage points. So that means that the 5 years before, it was under 30% turnout.
That's insane.
So obviously, I think that even if there was this idea of having much more of a direct say on the composition of the commission by the citizens, this whole idea of the citizens having a right to elect the commission itself,
Yeah.
or at least there being some sort of reform that would represent that. I still think, at least in the Czech Republic, it would still not yield the expected results. I think it all starts to basically inform. Obviously it's easier said than done. You can't just establish programs to start educating about the EU. But yeah, I think there it's really important to first mention, what can Czech Republic do in order to actually get more citizens interested in the European Union, how it works, and also try to get them to understand how the EU works.
I mean,
yeah,
it's funny because you're kind of like it's kind of the vision of our channel, right? Try to explain the EU in as simple terms as possible, which is hard enough as it is because the EU is so complex to our audience, right? So
yeah, and I think based on the election results, I think for the next 4 years or so, we'll see a lot more of this like a negative discourse about the EU.
Yeah,
the positive achievements won't really be voiced, and there will be a lot of like anti-Green Deal, anti-ETS, anti-migration pact. There will be a lot of, at least based on the numbers, taking into account that the government could potentially consist of ANO, Motorists, SPD, etc. It could prove to be very tough once again to reestablish this connection of the Czech citizens to the European Union.
I see your point. So yeah, a lot of reform as possible, but I think getting the citizens involved is the main one, because I also really agree with it. Once someone understands something, they're more inclined to be positive about it. Something you don't understand, you're generally negative about, right? I mean, or at least definitely not higher than neutral. Which brings us sorry, I can't answer everyone's question, so let's pick one out. Here, let's have a look. Here, there should be a mention that Stachilo had a lot of grifters in their campaign, like Malachova and Stropnitsky. I'm not sure if that says something to you.
Interesting. Yeah, those names do ring a bell. I'm just trying to figure out what was it, grifters?
Grifters, he said, yeah. Not sure.
What does that mean?
Yeah, maybe define your question a bit better, Runda. We'll get back to it. I think this is quite a good question. From Daniel Hirschbeck. What is the main difference in your eyes between ANO and Motorista?
I think the way that Motorists, I think, kind of approach this election is they kind of want to create this new like alternative right, this alternative center right to right wing for the Czech citizens. And I think here it's also important to mention that Motorists are really were born from this single issue, that being the ban of selling new cars with combustion engines. That's literally what the name of the party suggests.
Okay. Well, they'll like the new EPP in the European Parliament. By the way, this is we're going off topic now, but apparently Weber, the leader of the EPP, and the EPP is the largest party in the European Parliament, has promised that the combustion engine ban will disappear at the end of the year. So very interesting news. We'll make a video on it, of course.
Yeah, I think I just generally think to wrap up on that question, I think it's the general difference being that ANO is kind of like this. They try to be this kind of catch-all party. I personally think that a lot of what they propose, like especially when you look at the financial side of things, doesn't really match up. They promise to raise pensions, raise wages, lower taxes, and for those that know, Czech Republic has been in a pretty tough financial situation. They've been running a lot of deficits for basically the past 6 years, if not more. And obviously that's a pretty big topic in national politics. So that's kind of what ANO wants to do. I think Motorists are kind of just trying to offer this alternative. But obviously if they join a coalition with ANO, I think most of the program will kind of come from ANO's side. They do agree on a lot of things. There are some very like small and very niche things that you would need to be like very Czech to understand. That they disagree on. But I think that's just that Motorists are trying to offer an alternative, and ANO is kind of like still maintains their like populist catch-all rhetoric.
All right. Okay, cool. Then lastly, Sam, question for me, I think. Would you consider targeting Czechs more with the channel to further their understanding of the EU? We would love to. We actually had a Czech channel very briefly that created 5 videos. But that died for now, but maybe in the future we'll do again, because I think language always does remain an issue, right? If you really want to target people in the countryside and things like that, I don't know how many Czechs speak English, but I think in the countryside probably fewer, right, Jáchym? Yeah,
not that much, not that much.
Right?
I always keep telling people, like, foreign tourists, if they don't speak Czech, like, if you want to go to the countryside, try and find someone who is Czech.
Right.
A lot of these people, Czechs, tend to be, how do I put this? Depending on where you go, there can be a lot of, like, I don't really want to say racism, but you know where I'm kind of getting at. They're not very particularly fond of having foreigners there. So obviously, if you stick within Prague, it should be fine. But yeah, outside of Prague, and
Czech Republic is beautiful, man. I love it there. Like the nature.
No, it's absolutely beautiful. But obviously, if you want to explore beyond Prague and beyond the touristy areas, I would definitely recommend to go with someone Czech. So
yeah.
Hit me up, Lambertus, when you're in Prague.
Yeah,
and we can,
definitely. No. I mean, it was thanks everyone for joining the live stream, and a big thank you to you, Jáchym, for joining us to explain how Czech politics works. I would not have been able to do it without you. And everyone is in the chat. Make sure you subscribe if you want to support us. Go on Patreon, and we will release a video with all this information in condensed form by tomorrow morning at the latest. So yeah, Jáchym, thank you so much, man. Yeah, thank you. And also, just final thing, I can currently see 556 people watching. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone who came to watch me yap about Czech politics. Hopefully, I give you some new insights. But of course, I would suggest you keep following this. This is also reported by English-speaking media, so we'll definitely be following it, and we'll create, as Lambertus said, the comprehensive overview of the election results soon. Yep.
So perfect.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.